The most twisted 50s to 70s cartoons ever made, warning. What you're about to know will forever change how you view innocent cartoons. In 1954, the CIA secretly funded an animated film that traumatized children worldwide. These twisted cartoons from the 1950s and 1960s weren't accidents. They were psychological warfare disguised as entertainment. From banned adult cartoons that made Disney executives sick to underground adult cartoons with hidden messages so disturbing governments tried erasing them. One cartoon caused trauma so severe that psychologists coined a new term for it. Another's creators all died mysteriously within 5 years. And as for the last one, only 12 copies exist, with one selling for $50,000 before being immediately destroyed. Here are 20 strangest adult cartoons from the 1950s to 70s that only adults understand. Coonskin, 1975.
Hey, Fox, you seen Blue? I'm gonna get our money and leave.
Ralph Bakshi made a cartoon movie called Coonskin that mixed animation with real actors. The story was about 3 characters in Harlem trying to make fun of racist ideas, but it used very offensive old-style cartoon drawings. Before the movie even opened, many people got angry and protested outside theaters. They said the cartoon characters looked too much like harmful stereotypes, even if the movie was trying to fight racism. The protests worked. Movie theaters stopped showing it after just a few days. For 12 years, from 1975 to 1987, almost nobody could see this movie. It finally came back on video with a new name, Street Fight. Some people now think it was actually against racism, but many still find it offensive. The movie proved that even cartoons can cause big arguments about race. Crusader Rabbit, 1950 to 1959.
Only don't forget to let go of the pole on your way over.
Yeah. Crusader Rabbit holds the dubious honor of being television's first animated series. But don't let that fool you into thinking it was wholesome family fun. Created by Jay Ward, who later brought us Rocky and Bullwinkle, this crude-looking show featured a rabbit and his tiger sidekick Raglan T. Tiger getting into adventures that were anything but innocent. The animation was deliberately cheap, essentially moving paper cutouts, but the content was surprisingly sophisticated. Episodes dealt with political corruption, war profiteering, and social commentary disguised as children's entertainment. The jokes flew over kids' heads, while adults caught references to McCarthyism and Cold War tensions. What made it twisted wasn't graphic content, but its cynical worldview. Crusader Rabbit lived in a universe where good guys rarely won cleanly, and corruption was everywhere. For 1950s television, this was revolutionary and disturbing. Parents expected wholesome entertainment, but got biting satire instead. Animal Farm, 1954.
Oh, the blessings of a peaceful old age.
George Orwell's Animal Farm wasn't meant to be a cartoon, and this 1954 British adaptation proved why. Marketed as a children's film about talking farm animals, it was actually a brutal allegory about Soviet communism that traumatized unsuspecting young viewers worldwide. The animation was beautiful but deceptive. Cute pigs and horses drew children in, then exposed them to themes of political betrayal, propaganda, and totalitarian control. The film didn't shy away from Orwell's darker elements. Animals died, freedom was crushed, and hope was systematically destroyed. What made this particularly twisted was the CIA's secret involvement in funding the production to spread anti-communist sentiment. Children thought they were watching a cartoon about farm animals, but were actually consuming Cold War propaganda. The film was banned in several countries and caused parental outrage when its true nature became clear. Even today, Animal Farm remains one of the most psychologically intense animated films ever made. Weston Soda, 1965.
I'll kill the first lily-livered guy who talks. Yeah, me too.
Italian animator Bruno Bozzetto created what appeared to be a harmless Western parody, but delivered something far stranger. Weston Soda looked like a children's cartoon with its bright colors and silly characters, but it was actually a surreal adult comedy filled with sexual innuendos and violent slapstick. The plot follows a heroic cowboy trying to save a town from outlaws, but the execution was anything but traditional. Characters died in grotesque ways, sexual tension was palpable, and the humor was darkly sophisticated. What seemed like Roadrunner-style violence was actually quite disturbing when examined closely. The film became a cult hit in Europe, but confused American audiences who expected either serious westerns or innocent cartoons. Its blend of childlike animation with adult themes created an unsettling viewing experience that left many wondering who the target audience actually was. But Zetto's twisted genius was making something that looked innocent but felt profoundly wrong. Yellow Submarine, 1968.
Frankenstein? Oh yeah, I used to go out with his sister.
The Beatles' Yellow Submarine seems like a colorful children's fantasy. But beneath its psychedelic surface lurked themes that only adults could truly appreciate. While kids enjoyed the music and bright visuals, adults recognized a drug-fueled journey through consciousness that celebrated the counterculture movement. The plot about saving Pepperland from the Blue Meanies was actually an allegory about love conquering fascism, with clear references to political resistance and social change. The animation style deliberately mimicked the visual effects of LSD trips, with melting landscapes and reality-bending sequences that made perfect sense to the drug-using audience of 1968. What made it twisted wasn't explicit content, but its subversive message. Parents brought children to see a Beatles movie and unknowingly exposed them to anti-establishment propaganda wrapped in cartoon form. The film's popularity among the hippie movement wasn't coincidental. It was designed to appeal to altered states of consciousness. Yellow Submarine remains one of animation's most successful Trojan horses. Clutch Cargo.
It seems you invited all the old-timers.
Clutch Cargo pioneered a disturbing animation technique called Synchrovox that haunted children for decades. Instead of animating mouths, creators superimposed real human lips onto cartoon faces, creating an uncanny valley effect that was deeply unsettling to watch. The show followed adventurer Clutch Cargo and his companions, but the bizarre lip-syncing made every episode feel like a fever dream. Characters' faces remained static while real mouths moved independently, creating a disjointed, nightmarish viewing experience that saved money but traumatized audiences. What made this twisted was the complete disconnect between the show's adventure format and its deeply disturbing visual presentation. Children couldn't articulate why the show felt wrong, but adults recognized the creepy, almost supernatural quality of the animation technique. The series became a cultural touchstone for things that seemed innocent but were actually horrifying. Its influence can be seen in later surreal comedy shows, but nothing quite matched Clutch Cargo's accidental horror. Cleopatra 1970 Osamu Tezuka's Cleopatra was part of his adult-oriented Animorama trilogy and pushed boundaries that most Western audiences weren't ready for. Marketed as historical animation, it was actually a sexually charged, surreal reimagining of ancient Egypt that mixed historical drama with erotic fantasy. The film featured explicit sexual content, graphic violence, and psychological themes that made it unsuitable for general audiences. Tezuka used his reputation as the creator of Astro Boy to create something completely opposite, a mature exploration of power, sexuality, and corruption in ancient times. What made it twisted was the bait and switch. Audiences expected family-friendly historical education, but encountered full nudity, sexual assault, and brutal political maneuvering. The animation quality was exceptional, making the disturbing content even more impactful. Cleopatra bombed commercially because nobody knew what to do with an animated film that was simultaneously artistic and explicit. It remained largely unseen for decades, becoming a cult curiosity among animation historians. 1001 Nights, 1969. The first entry in Tezuka's Animorama trilogy, 1001 Nights, took beloved Middle Eastern folk tales and transformed them into an adults-only animated experience. What should have been family-friendly stories about Aladdin and Sinbad became explicit explorations of sexuality and violence. The film featured full nudity, sexual themes, and brutal content that shocked audiences expecting Disney-style storytelling. Tezuka deliberately used the familiar fairy tale format to subvert expectations and create something unprecedented in animation. What made this particularly twisted was its artistic merit. The animation was beautiful, the storytelling sophisticated, and the cultural details authentic. It wasn't exploitation, but serious adult entertainment disguised as children's stories. The film failed commercially in most markets because distributors couldn't figure out how to market an animated film with X-rated content. Parents brought children expecting Aladdin and left traumatized. The disconnect between animation as a medium and adult content created an uncomfortable viewing experience that influenced future adult animation. Fritz the Cat, 1972.
As a cat, I have a considerable guilt complex.
Ralph Bakshi's Fritz the Cat shattered every assumption about animation being for children. Based on Robert Crumb's Underground comics, it became the first animated film to receive an X rating and proved that cartoons could be just as adult as any live-action film. The story follows a hedonistic cat through 1960s counterculture, encountering sex, drugs, and social commentary along the way. What made it twisted wasn't just the explicit content, but its cynical worldview. Fritz was an anti-hero, selfish, manipulative, and ultimately destructive. The film sparked protests, bans, and cultural debates about the nature of animation, animation. Parents were horrified that cartoons could contain such content, while adults struggled with animation that looked childish but dealt with mature themes. Fritz the Cat's success proved there was an audience for adult animation, paving the way for everything from Heavy Traffic to South Park. Its twisted genius was treating animation as an art form rather than children's entertainment. Heavy Traffic 1973.
I've been from Boston to Bombay. It's not where I'm going, honey.
Ralph Bakshi's follow-up to Fritz the Cat dove even deeper into urban decay and social commentary. Heavy Traffic blended live-action footage with animation to create a surreal portrait of 1970s New York that was beautiful and disturbing in equal measure. The film followed a young cartoonist navigating a world of violence, racism, and sexual tension. What made it twisted was its unflinching portrayal of urban life. No punches were pulled, no harsh realities softened for general audiences. Bakshi's animation style made disturbing content even more impactful. The contrast between cartoon characters and real-world settings created an unsettling atmosphere that lingered long after viewing. Violence felt more shocking when committed by animated characters in realistic environments. Heavy Traffic earned critical acclaim but remained too intense for mainstream success. Its twisted vision of American life was too honest for comfortable viewing, making it a cult classic among those who appreciated its uncompromising artistry. Fantastic Planet 1973. René Laloux's Fantastic Planet created one of animation's most disturbing alien worlds. The film's unique visual style, combining surreal artwork with unsettling imagery, told a story of oppression and rebellion that worked on multiple levels. The plot about giant aliens enslaving tiny humans was clearly allegorical, but the execution was genuinely nightmarish. Strange creatures, bizarre rituals, and otherworldly landscapes created a viewing experience that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. What made it twisted was its ability to make viewers uncomfortable without explicit content. The alien world felt wrong in ways that were hard to articulate, too organic, too sexual, too threatening. Children found it frightening while adults recognized its political commentary. Fantastic Planet won awards and critical acclaim, but remained difficult to watch. Its twisted vision of oppression, disguised as science fiction, created lasting impressions on viewers who weren't prepared for its psychological intensity. Belladonna of Sadness, 1973. The final entry in Tezuka's Animorama trilogy pushed artistic boundaries further than any animated film before or since. Belladonna of Sadness used watercolor animation and explicit sexual imagery to tell a story of feminine revenge that was both beautiful and deeply disturbing. The film's visual style was unprecedented, flowing, organic artwork that pulsed with erotic energy. What made it twisted was the combination of artistic merit and graphic content. This wasn't exploitation, but serious art that happened to contain extremely adult material. The story dealt with sexual assault, supernatural revenge, and medieval corruption in ways that were psychologically intense. The artistic presentation made disturbing content even more impactful. Beauty and horror intertwined in ways that created lasting psychological impressions. Belladonna bombed commercially and disappeared for decades, becoming a legendary lost film among animation enthusiasts. Its twisted genius was proving animation could handle any subject matter, no matter how adult or disturbing. The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, 1974.
Want to drop your phony inhibitions and love your fellow man?
The unauthorized sequel to Fritz the Cat proved that lightning doesn't strike twice. Created without Ralph Bakshi or Robert Crumb's involvement, it took the original's twisted premise and pushed it into pure exploitation territory. What made this particularly twisted was its cynical creation. The film existed solely to capitalize on the original's success, featuring explicit content without the social commentary that made Fritz meaningful. It was animation as pure shock value. The 9 fantasy segments showcase Fritz in various scenarios: Nazi Germany, space adventures, urban violence, each more disturbing than the last. The lack of coherent message made the explicit content feel gratuitous rather than artistic. Critics and audiences rejected the film, but it demonstrated animation's potential for pure adult entertainment. Its twisted legacy was proving that animated characters could be exploited just like human actors, opening uncomfortable questions about the medium's future. Down and Dirty Duck, 1974.
Aha! The freedom of the open road! This is great.
Roger Corman's production company created this deliberately offensive animated film that pushed every boundary it could find. Down and Dirty Duck featured explicit sexual content, racial stereotypes, and crude humor that made Fritz the Cat look sophisticated. The plot about a man and his talking duck companion was merely an excuse for increasingly outrageous scenarios. What made it twisted was its complete lack of artistic pretension. This was pure exploitation designed to shock and offend. The film's crude animation style matched its crude content, creating a viewing experience that was simultaneously amateurish and disturbing. It felt like animated pornography created by teenagers, which wasn't far from the truth. Down and Dirty Duck failed commercially and critically, but became a cult curiosity among fans of outsider art. Its twisted contribution to animation history was proving that the medium could be just as tasteless as any other form of entertainment. Tarzoon, Shame of the Jungle, 1975.
You cute little baby.
This French-Belgian parody transformed the Tarzan legend into an explicitly sexual animated comedy that horrified the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. Tarzoon featured graphic sexual humor, grotesque character designs, and scenarios that pushed animated content into uncharted territory. The English dub featuring John Belushi and Bill Murray made the twisted content even more surreal. Hearing familiar comedy voices deliver extremely adult material created a cognitive dissonance that enhanced the film's disturbing impact. What made it particularly twisted was its complete deconstruction of a beloved character. Tarzoon wasn't heroic but pathetic, his jungle wasn't noble but corrupt, and his adventures weren't exciting but disturbing. The film systematically destroyed childhood innocence. Legal battles and censorship made the film difficult to see, adding to its cult mystique. Its twisted legacy was proving that no fictional character was sacred when animation moved into adult territory. Once Upon a Girl, 1976.
Who are you?
This X-rated animated film took beloved fairy tales and transformed them into explicit sexual parodies that traumatized anyone expecting family entertainment. Mother Goose stood trial for corrupting children's stories, leading to graphic retellings of classic tales. What made it twisted was the complete violation of childhood trust. Familiar characters like Little Red Riding Hood and Cinderella were transformed into sexual objects, destroying their innocent associations forever. The film's animation quality was surprisingly professional, with former Disney and Hanna-Barbera artists working under pseudonyms. This made the explicit content more disturbing. It looked like legitimate animation but contained pornographic material. Once Upon a Girl disappeared quickly from theaters but survived through underground distribution. Its twisted contribution was proving that animation could corrupt any content, no matter how innocent or beloved. Wizards, 1977.
Science and technology were outlawed millions of years ago.
Ralph Bakshi's post-apocalyptic fantasy appeared to be a children's adventure, but contained disturbing themes about war, technology, and human nature. The film's blend of traditional animation and rotoscope footage created an unsettling visual experience. What made Wizards twisted was its deceptive marketing and genuine darkness. Promoted as fantasy adventure, it actually dealt with fascism, nuclear war, and the corruption of innocence. The wizard avatar's journey became a meditation on violence and power. The film's most disturbing sequence used actual Nazi footage rotoscoped into animated form, creating an unprecedented blend of historical horror and cartoon fantasy. This technique made real-world evil more disturbing by presenting it through animated characters. Wizards confused audiences who expected either serious fantasy or light entertainment. Its twisted vision of post-apocalyptic recovery was too dark for children, but too animated for adults, creating a unique and unsettling viewing experience. Watership Down, 1978.
We've got to go away from the Warren. All of us.
Go away.
Perhaps the most deceptive entry on this list, Watership Down looked like a charming story about rabbits, but delivered psychological trauma that affected generations of children. The film's violence was realistic and disturbing, featuring graphic deaths and brutal conflicts. What made it twisted was the complete mismatch between expectations and content. Parents brought children expecting Disney-style animal adventures but encountered war, death, and political oppression. The cute character designs made the violence more shocking. The film's rating systems failed completely. Rated G in America despite containing content that traumatized young viewers. This created a generation of adults who still associate animated rabbits with psychological horror. Watership Down's twisted legacy was proving that animation could be more emotionally devastating than live action. Its innocent appearance masked content that would be disturbing in any medium, making it uniquely traumatic. Lupin III, The Mystery of Mamo. This Japanese animated film introduced Western audiences to adult-oriented anime that dealt with sexuality, violence, and philosophical themes in ways that confused traditional animation expectations. Johnny Corncob, 1973. This Hungarian animated film used folktale structures to deliver adult content that pushed European animation into uncharted territory. Johnny Corncob featured explicit sexual content, political commentary, and surreal imagery that challenged every assumption about animated storytelling. What made it twisted was its use of familiar fairy tale elements to deliver completely unfamiliar content. The film looked like children's entertainment but contained adult material that would be shocking in any medium. The animation style was deliberately crude and unsettling, matching content that dealt with sexuality, violence, and social criticism. This created a viewing experience that was simultaneously childish and mature, innocent and corrupt. Johnny Corncob remained largely unknown outside Europe, but its twisted vision influenced adult animation development in ways that are still being discovered by film historians.